For the regular.
Well, thank you. First, I'd like to also thank DIA for holding this. I think this is an effort that will touch everyone in this room if it is enacted, and could be, an important change driver. We, of course, have been working with all the stakeholders as well, and I really thank Clay for, opening the door, and Fred and others for letting us into the process, along with the other stakeholders. So this was really getting to this place has been a conversation, an extended conversation, not a battle or warring memos or different things like that. We've really sat down and talked things over, and hopefully to get to the best point that can meet the needs of multiple stakeholders. It is interesting how different people, depending on where you're situated, you see things very differently. And so you look at the same, for FDA, people look at the same drug application, and we get like multiple different opinions on it from the press and different patient groups and so forth. And similar, I think, with any part of this legislation, where you're sitting kind of influences what you're going to say about it, what you think about it, and so forth. But I would say almost everything in here is the result of a consensus driving process to try to get to something that is beneficial, that will make a difference, and that most people can live with. And so that's very good. Now, no one, I think, could dispute that that innovation in drug development needs help. We're seeing a lot of innovation because we've kind of turned the corner, I think, on the molecular revolution, and we're seeing a lot of innovative drugs being developed that are based on molecular targets that are known and defined, and so their role in the disease is better understood, and so we're seeing more success there, as in the breakthrough therapies and so forth. However, there is still no doubt that this process takes too long and costs way too much and is way too unsuccessful. It is still only about 2 out of every 10 drugs that enter the clinic will come out the other end, and one of those 2 might not be that successful commercially. So, there's a lot of room for improvement in this whole ecosystem. And I think the bill is trying to look at areas where, in fact, legislative efforts can help move that along. There are other things that need to be done. So, of course, the increased funding for NIH will help keep that engine going. There's a tremendous worry that young investigators are getting out of the game and going into finance or some, more promising field, plastics, who knows what, but not drug development or not basic science and discovery. So that is an important piece. The monies for FDA, which have great gratitude that this was thought about, because generally speaking, over the last couple decades, which I've been there, Nancy was very kind about how long I've been there, but since I've been there, most of our mandates have been unfunded mandates, and that just really stretches us thin and makes it very difficult to accomplish what people expect us to do. PDUFA and GDUFA and so forth are exceptions where we actually negotiated sort of fee-for-service with the industry, and those programs have been highly successful because we try to do exactly what we've committed to do under those programs. So the dollars are highly appreciated. I'm concerned because the device program doesn't have any dollars right now associated with it, and they're our partners in a lot of things. Like, we can foresee that drug-device combinations are going to become more and more common, or treatments that use, advanced imaging, and at the same time you're delivering a drug to a certain part of the body and so forth, and all this kind of high-tech sort of stuff, and a lot of the robotics and everything, we need the device people and the companion diagnostics. So that's something I think that still needs some consideration. I agree with Clay. I've thought all along that the patient-focused drug development has the promise of becoming the most transformative piece of this bill. And that's talking about change, because the funding is really something that will sustain the momentum and everything, but what is going to be different? And if we can actually develop a structured way to collect information from patients, from representative patients with a disease, about the burden of their disease, so that we understand what matters to them, what they want to have alleviated about their disease, and then we can figure out ways to measure that, and then we can figure out ways to get reported from them how they're doing on a new intervention. I think this will really be transformative, not just for drug development, but for the patient experience in taking medicines and understanding what the medicines will and will not do. So this is a long-scale project, but we got to get started on it if we're going to actually make this transformation happen. And the bill, instructs us to do that, and I think that that'll set us on that path of getting that work done, which has a lot of other things that'll have to be done. It's not just one meeting we're going to have or something, but it's a whole program that needs to be set up with better development of PROs and better structured collection of patient data, and a path from having that information to having a guidance so that industry knows what the path to market is and what should be studied and so forth. So this is a whole package of things that will take a long time to accomplish, but what I like about it is that we can enlist a lot of other parties, okay, and it's not just FDA having to do this. Last week, I think, or week before, we issued a new guidance on muscular dystrophy, and that came from a guidance that a parent project, Muscular Dystrophy, created and then sent into us. That was a 60-page document. It has much valuable information in it, but our guidance on the drug development piece was a smaller section of that. And I think that's a model for how we can be we can synergize with other groups who are really interested in getting drug development done in a certain area. A number of years ago, Ellen and friends decided that in cancer we really needed to have combination therapies, and it's pretty obvious that we do, but there's a question of how do you study them, but it's also true in infectious disease, because the same thing happens. Resistance emerges, you got to hit them with a bunch of different agents at once. So they got people together, friends did, from the ID community and the cancer community, and figured out parameters, which is very technically complicated, about when you could study combinations together without showing the contribution of each, and what would be the criteria that would make that acceptable. And they submitted that to FDA. We published the guidance. That was just maybe 4 years ago or something. We've already approved drugs based on these principles. So we can be, bolstered by the work of outside parties if they are willing to do that scholarly work that's needed to get done. And I think the patient-focused drug development is going to be another example of that, where we get tremendous input from groups if they're willing to put the time in. So